Now, you might be wondering from the title where exactly this video is going to go. And don't worry, you're in for a treat, but also there's some serious analysis that needs to go on here because these leftists are absolutely mentally debauched and insane. But I am, of course, talking about Matt Walsh. I did watch his documentary on What is a Woman. I got a subscription to the Daily Wire just to watch that. It was glorious. It was about what you would expect in terms of showcasing leftist terrorism on reality, I guess you could say. Just the blatant disregard for objective facts and objective parameters and biology and science and morality and math and logic and reason and society and children and the family that you would expect from the left. It was at the beginning of this conversation, this interview, when he was asked a very low IQ question, a question that is, you could say, devoid of an understanding of the current culture. He was asked in the making of this documentary, What is a Woman? There are two genders, by the way. But he was asked, did you learn anything from these people? And that question is such an interesting question because it implies that these people who are delusional and these people that say men can get pregnant and are playing the same game as us. It implies that they're playing a game of reality and are interested in a discourse, in a dialogue where you trade ideas in good faith, in free speech to create something better than what you started with. And that is a fundamental misunderstanding that demonstrates not only are you disconnected from the culture, which both these guys are for a variety of reasons, but it shows the actual danger of acting as though leftists are operating in good faith when everything that defines their ideology is actually about corrupting what's good. Their opposition is to truth itself, to reality itself, and that opposition is defined by resentment. Now you may be asking yourself, Abraham, why are you showing us this relatively obscure moment from when this absolute fucking Chad went on the iced coffee hour to educate a couple of normies? And my response is, hold on, let me close my window so that my neighbors don't know that I support Ben Shapiro. They might just bomb my apartment out of tolerance. That was close. I almost suffered a inclusive crime there. And I've covered this in a lot of my previous videos. It always comes up because leftist delusion is at the core of the woke mind virus. The woke mind virus, of course, is leftist ideology. It is Marxist ideology, as I've explained many times. But here we go.
And when you were talking to people on the other side of the token, which you did a lot throughout this, What is a Woman?
The other side of the token. People who think men can get pregnant and biology doesn't exist. You see the false dichotomy here?
Documentary, was there anything that they said that you thought was like a valid argument, or maybe that surprised you? Because you obviously went in with certain expectations of what they would say. Did you hear anything where you're kind of like, oh, that kind of makes a little bit of sense, I understand?
No, I don't actually think he went into that, having watched the interview and thought a lot about the issue. I don't think he walked in there with what you could call expectations of what they were going to say. I think he walked in there with hopes that they would adhere to reality with even a modicum of faith, such that you could engage with them on some level of analysis with some level of common ground so that you could build something. But instead they just went full retard. Oh, man can get pregnant. Are you oppressing me with white supremacy right now?
Stand that.
No, never.
Exactly, dude.
Honestly, there wasn't.
So there was no like aha moment. It was just
Certainly not.
He's laughing for a different reason. He doesn't realize the question he just asked is actually a dumb question.
An aha moment. I'm trying to think if anyone said, on that side of it, if there was anyone who said anything that I even thought was vaguely interesting or legitimate, and the answer is no, because their position is so fundamentally confused and absurd that when that's your starting point, you can't possibly say anything true. Like when your starting point is that
completely accurate. I would say, in addition to being confused and disturbed, it is actually deliberately orthogonal to reality itself. They have a resentment for truth. They have a resentment for the notion that an objective reality exists. And the reason for that is manifold. But one is that an objective reality would judge them in a way that is intolerable to their ideology. If they're judged, then they have to ask themselves a series of questions that they would find intolerable, such as, who am I in relationship to reality? And that would result in them realizing that they exist. Therefore, they would have to realize that the individual exists, which invalidates the presupposition of Marxism, the leftist ideology that states there is only such thing as group identity. So just on that single level of analysis, their ideology would fall apart. And I'm not saying that they're thinking on this level that I just described, but they do know what I just described to be instinctual. They instinctually know what I just described to be true. So that's why they immediately balk at the idea of individual identity, responsibility, and objective analysis.
men can have babies, and that's the universe you're living in. It's your starting point is that men can have babies, and that's the universe you're living in. It's a universe so divorced from reality that whatever grows from that root is going to also be untrue. And so,
right. And what I want you to understand is that it is not just untrue; it is deliberately untrue. They are lying on purpose because they actually hate reality. They are at war with truth because their ideology detests objective frameworks.
What we encountered on that side was just a whole like mess of confusion, basically.
So who holds these beliefs? Because I was at
the people in the documentary. What are you saying?
The university.
And on top of just the people in the documentary, it is a trickle-down effect of the ideology that tells these people you have to believe these absurd positions in order to have virtue, in order to have merit. You have to believe that you get virtue and status as a result of being oppressed in the identity politic groups of Marxism, being race, sexual identity, and by the way, this is transposed Marxism, so just stick with me here for a second. It's race, sexual identity, sexual proclivity, any type of thing that you could say, this is what defines me in the modern era, is something that can bestow upon you counterfeit virtue according to them. It used to be, this is the original Marxism that was written by Marx, it used to be just economic differences. But it was changed from the 20th century into the 21st century to include race and all the other stuff that you could say. This is the reason why they think that equity determines should determine hiring, and equity determines your virtue. Oh my gosh, we should hire more black female pilots because they're by default just as good as the white pilots because of their skin color, not because of their competence or merit in, let's say, passing flight school tests. They just think that virtue is defined by those classes. That's a Marxist idea, and of course, it's a very evil, perverse, reprehensible set of beliefs.
University of California, Santa Barbara, so like a public school in California. And a lot of people I found, obviously like mostly liberal students in college, but I didn't see many people with that level of like extremism that like men can like have babies.
Okay, in Santa Barbara, the college that I went to was up north in Wisconsin, liberal arts, and it was bad. The doctrine of equity, this was in 2019, 2020, before the pandemic, it was bad. The Marxism was palpable to any person that was paying attention. I can only imagine what it would be in California, Santa Barbara, which is very, very leftist. And what you need to understand, too, is that in a leftist environment, people aren't always coming out and saying men can get pregnant, but what they are saying is they're operating with an ethos of if you step out of line, then you're a bad person. If you disagree with us, you're a bad person. And because there's no opposition, because they don't believe in free speech, because they don't believe in reason or rationality, that's the reason they hate Elon Musk, by the way, they don't tolerate any person disagreeing, so there's no one to push back. And so you get positions that are so absurd. The reason you can get someone being saying absurd things, and by the way, the reason you can get someone even being delusional in the real world is because they don't have contact with someone else that would say, wait a second, you've kind of gone out of bounds here. This is not right. Let me push back. And that's why society is important, because if a person is just by themselves, then they really can go off the deep end. But if they're connected to society, then it can kind of keep them in bounds. Leftists isolate themselves because they say any person disagrees with us is a bad person.
And stuff like that.
I think, that's a fascinating question too about how many of the people that pretend to believe this actually believe it. You know, when we were...
None of them actually believe it. They are all living in a tyranny where you are forced to lie. A tyranny actually means a society where everyone is forced to lie all the time about everything.
Making the film,
you have in North Korea, that's what you have in every tyranny, that's what you have in even fictional tyrannies like 1984, which is more, that's obviously describing something that we're living in today.
There's sort of two groups of people we talk to, and one were the experts, the doctors and professors and that sort of thing.
Dr. Kumar, can biological men become pregnant and give birth? So
this is a perfect example of the woke mind virus. Pay attention. This is a question asked in an objective framework, implying an absolute truth that exists to be discovered. Listen to the answer.
Men can have pregnancies, especially...
Men can have pregnancies. It's the first statement. Not even the second. The first statement.
Men. So men can have pregnancies, especially trans men.
And then we also just talked to normal people on the street. What we found is that the normal people
By the way, I saw that clip, and the second thing he said was that this line of questioning is transphobic. Meaning, so there's the initial statement that is completely delusional, it is outside of reality, and then the second statement is, you're a bad person for questioning me. So keep that in mind.
Street, oftentimes we're repeating kind of a version of what we heard from the experts.
Right.
But if you dug a little bit deeper, it became obvious to me that they don't really believe what they're saying. Oftentimes we're repeating kind of a version of what we heard from the experts.
men can have pregnancies, especially trans men.
And I've often wondered if we were to go back and do that same man on the street sort of thing now, would we find many more people who are willing to say, well, no, of course you can't. Thing now.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered if we were to go back and do that same man on the street sort of thing now, would we find many more people who are willing to say, well, no, of course you can't. I think
that's because the woke mind virus has been challenged, and also at this point we can't ignore the fact that free speech exists online as a result of Elon Musk's actions. Before that, it would be difficult, but now people know that there is opposition, or if they already knew it, they see it manifested in front of them. Oh, wait a second, people are openly disagreeing, and they're keeping their jobs, and the sky hasn't fallen, and the apocalypse hasn't hit because people are saying men can't get pregnant. Oh, wait, we can oppose these people? And then the entire, zeitgeist shifts.
And I think we would. I mean, I think that and the polls and surveys on this issue kind of bear that out.
So how did you get started with the Daily Wire? Obviously now you have a massive platform where like millions.
So that's the most important part of this interview that I wanted to show you. It is the waking up fact that these people are disconnected from reality. It's the waking up fact that they aren't in the same conceptual universe as us. They don't care. It's not even that they don't care about truth. See, I almost just fell for it myself. I was about to say they don't care about truth. They don't believe in truth. They don't think it exists, because the notion of truth invalidates their entire matrices. Postmodernism, when combined with Marxism, not only says, do you become virtuous as a result of being a victim and adhering to our ideology, but with postmodernism, truth doesn't exist either. Deadly combination that results in the most evil set of ideas the world has ever seen. This is why we must break the fever of the woke mind virus. If you have any questions about what I've described here, ask them below in the comments. I'll answer them. And remember, guys, subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel, and also follow me on X. You can follow me on X at the exact same name that I have here on my channel, Abraham B. Iyer. That's me. So follow and subscribe. Let's go.